I was just mulling it over before, like, obviously speaking to you, and I was thinking to myself, like, because I was like writing them down, like mobility, sight, hearing loss, and then sort of like, I don't know if mental disability is the right word to say. I'm not really sure. So like things
Well,
that
mental health and
yeah,
issues where people have got, sort of psychiatric issues. I mean, it can be debilitating. It can certainly be
yeah.
a disability, but again,
Well, I
it's
was
not
thinking more
necessarily
like
visible.
maybe illnesses that like I'm trying to think of like what you would call it, but like illnesses like you know what I mean
Mm,
for people who what's the word like if you're born um with maybe learning issues or stuff like that.
yeah,
So maybe like learning issues that comes with like Down syndrome and other things like that.
mm.
So I don't really know.
It's
Anyway,
difficult though because again, um, people, for example, with Down syndrome, there are people who are incredibly functional in the world and with the
mhm.
right support manage to live independent
Oh
and
yeah, definitely,
and other
definitely. That's
people
what I'm saying. It's kind of
other
such a
people who can't,
it's such it's a scope, isn't it? It's like so varied and lens. You know what I mean? Like
Mm, mm.
anyway, I'll say hello because I haven't even done that. I'm just
Someone's in.
uh, hello everyone and welcome to Let's Talk About. And this week we're doing disability. Um, obviously, I understand, and I'm sure that a lot of you in the chat have issues yourself or know someone who are close to you with issues that affect their life on a daily basis. And I think it's just to talk about the different types and how that affects those people and a
Mm.
lot of things that people don't think about, you know what I mean? Because I know that before, obviously, I mean, I'm in a wheelchair. Um, there is hope a little bit I think to get my knees done. That is the hope, and then eventually get back on my feet. But where that is, I don't know, and how long it'll be, and if it ever happens, I'm not sure. You know what I mean? But there's a little bit of hope still. So
You've got to have hope.
um, you do. That is true. But yeah, I suppose it sounds daft this, but whenever I saw someone in a wheelchair, prior to me being in one, whenever I saw someone in a wheelchair, I would just think, oh, they just can't walk. But you don't think of all the things that not being able to walk means. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
don't.
it's life. It is life changing, and it
It
totally
is.
changes your view on the world and the way the world views you because it's something that's so visible. Um, and it's the accessibility thing that I certainly think more about that now because I know so many more people like yourself who have it and think my town is very old. Most of my town is quite old, and it is so not designed for,
Yeah,
for anyone to actually access unless they're walking. You know, yeah, not thought
yeah.
through at all.
It's um, it's complicated because it's the same. I mean, I think by law now it's only like all public buildings, that kind of thing, that have to have accessibility for everyone.
Yeah,
Whereas
and new
like
buildings too.
so hospitals, council buildings, you know what I mean, they have to have the accessibility, but you
Mm.
know most places don't. And I mean, as I said, as I was saying, I've just been into the city centre today, and they're doing a lot of road works, and I've got obviously a void. So the places where I normally go, I've got to rethink my, um, you know, directions and things like that, and it can get quite complicated and stressful for me
Oh
because
yeah,
like it affects my anxiety if I have to do like when I'm going somewhere I know and I've been there loads of times, I'm totally fine. But when I have to do something new, or you know, because you don't know what the drop curb's going to be, you don't know whether you can get down, whether you can get and the amount of times I've gone all the way along a road, got to the end, and realised I can't get off the end of it because it's like a huge curb,
yeah. No, that's
and because
dangerous.
like the battery pack for the wheelchair is like carried underneath, so the gap underneath isn't as big You know what I mean? So I can't just tip off. I mean, I once did nearly come down the step because I had no other option, and I come down this step and it was quite steep, and like it literally practically tipped me out. So yeah.
But that's the thing, you know, the lack of consideration. It's fine when they're upgrading somewhere or building it, and they widened our high street quite recently, and to all intents and purposes, it was a bit of a waste of money because it was all to do with providing places lorries could unload and stuff like that. It wasn't actually about the pedestrians, but you know, the way they expect people to go a very long way around to get somewhere when people are naturally, especially anyone walking, is going to naturally take the shorter route. Doesn't leave anyone in a chair or mobility scooter any options.
Yeah. I think Kirsten's saying our shop isn't very wheelchair friendly and a strange doorway which I can't afford to change. I think that's been the same for quite a lot of shops because they were never built for that, were they? You know, I think like Heather's saying is that in the future, if these areas are developed, and hopefully they're developed in a way that suits everyone, but as they are now, and it's the same in my town, there's loads. I mean, loads of charity shops and places that I'd love to go in, but I can't because they're just a single door, you know what I mean? And there's just no way. Very few of them have accessibility, but that's just the way that they were designed. But whenever they've revamped the town and the areas that they've done it in a better way, so it is accessible to everybody. So, and I think it's good, and it needs to keep happening. Do you know what I mean? But
absolutely. But it ends up being a money thing too, doesn't it? They end up,
and that's the thing.
Economically.
Cost is just a massive thing, and it takes people out of being able to do that sort of thing, and I totally get that, you know. But like, I just like in the charity shop I went in today, to be honest, it gets quite busy, and it wasn't very busy when I went in, so I was like, I'll be fine. But then by the time I was coming out, there's about another 20 people had come in, and I was like, oh my god, because I have to get past them, and I don't want to sort of crash into anyone. And the amount of people that just walk in front of you or tut at you, I've had that quite a lot.
Oh no, that's rude.
Yeah, I get tut at that. Someone completely swatted me and moved out the way once because she was pushing a pram down, and I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back. I couldn't reverse. Because the pavement wasn't wide enough for us to move, and I couldn't reverse. So she sort of stepped off the curb to go around us. When if she'd just waited where she was, I could have gone past her, and then she could have come, but I couldn't do anything. And so she was swore at me and slammed her own pushchair with her van in it, which seemed a bit weird, but there you go.
Yeah, sounds like she's had an issue. But like I say, people get cross and frustrated. And I mean, admittedly, even in the charity shops we've got where there is access, sometimes there really isn't much room inside because they've tried to cram the maximum stuff in, and it's difficult enough to manage when you've got a bag or something with you, never mind if you're in a wheelchair, you know. Definitely.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, the majority of people are lovely, helpful, some people over helpful. They try and sort of do things you don't need. You know what I mean? It's happened on maybe 2 or 3 occasions when I've been in Tesco, and I might have been looking at something, and someone's reached over in front of us. I'm thinking they're just grabbing something from themselves and then handing it like I wanted it. I'm like,
do they think you're not capable of asking if you need something?
There's that, but also you know what I mean? It's just I've had that, and I've had people just come right up to me, do you need any help? And I'll be like, no, I'm fine, thank you, you know, whatever.
That's fine.
And then I'll try and reach something, and I've seen people just walk over, stand watches and not help. I once used me. I wanted some salad, and there wasn't anybody about to ask, and I had them packed, and they were just a bit too far back for us to get. So I used my purse to like extend my reach, and then in the same that I was gonna knock it forward, and it would fall into the fridge bit at the bottom, and then I could pull it out, and it'd be fine. But I used too much power that I knocked it clean across the aisle, and it was rolling along crossing the aisle just as the Tesco worker was coming the other way, and she picked it up and went, "This yours by any chance?" I was like, yeah.
Yeah. But that's it. I mean, I find when I'm in a supermarket, it always takes me a while to get around. I've got my regular one just over the back from me. Mm-hmm. And the main reason is because I'm tall enough to reach the stuff on the top shelf. So I do get people saying, "Would you mind?" I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." Doink, there you go.
Yeah.
And being small is not a disability, but the way some of these places are arranged, you're like, well, how are you supposed to reach it if you're under 5'4" or what have you?
I know, it's definitely like that. And if I wanted something and I had to wait for someone to help, but then the lady I asked, she was only just tall enough to reach it, because there was like it was like pushed, it was some glue I wanted, and it was like right back on the thing, on the cards, on the thing, and she right at the top, and even she was like tippy toes to get it.
Yeah.
But I think the only other thing that had happened whilst I was in Tesco was this poor lady, and I know she didn't mean it in any way to be thingy, but me and my daughter were in and would been buying bits and bobs, and she was waiting to be served and stuff, and then I was behind her, and so she was chatting the woman, saying, "Oh, we're going. Who's cooking tea? Blah blah blah," like that. But like Laura was talking to her at the same time, and I mean I was listening and whatever. And then she went, "Just so you know, I'm talking to you as well. I know that sometimes people avoid talking to the disabled person." My God, she made her feel so awkward. She was getting like, "But I just need you to know that I am talking to you because, and I'm like,
it comes from a good place, but cringe.
And
do you need to say that?
Yeah, what I wanted to say was, because I think what she realised is she'd realised what she'd done, and then kept trying to dig herself out, so it just made it more and more awkward. When all I was thinking to myself, well, just talk to me. You don't have to explain that.
I was going to say, she was talking to you, it wouldn't need explanation. Mm-hmm. And there is that slight assumption that I think is what she was alluding to, that people assume if someone's in a wheelchair that somehow their psychological and cognitive functions aren't up to scratch, which can happen, but not necessarily.
Talk to Laura above me, not speak to me when and ask a question. I've had people shout at me like I'm deaf as well.
Yeah,
kind of weird. Yeah,
that's odd. This sort of assumption.
It's very strange how it changes. Very strange.
And it must be very odd, I mean, to be in a wheelchair, you're much lower down than everybody, so you're always having to look up to people, and it's a bit like when you were a kid and you hated being treated like a child. I think that the default is that people do the same, not consciously. I don't think it's a conscious thing. People need to be more aware.
Yeah. Also, like, I notice sometimes people stare, and then like when I catch that glimpse, they give me this kind of weird smile that I can't even explain it. I don't know if it's kind of like self-pity or something, but it's a bit weird. You know what I mean?
Awkward. Yeah, but they're probably embarrassed at being caught staring. And it's nervous.
Yeah, probably. But and then again, the other day when I was in Tesco, I was chatting to someone who I kind of knew. You know what I mean? Like, when you kind of know some people. And I stopped to talk to us, and then just randomly went, "So what's wrong with you then?" Like, like, "Oh, okay." And then, but then he had his shopping list and went, "Is it as long as this list?" Like that.
Trying to be funny. Yeah, not a good enough friend to get away with that, I don't think.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
How strange. I mean, it's a bit personal, isn't it? It's kind of like,
Angie said it was the same with our shop. It had a step up to the shop, Nick made a ramp which we would bring out if needed, but I'm sure there were people who assumed they couldn't access and kept going. Yeah, they probably did. And the shop around the corner here, they have like a bell, a lower down bell, what you can ring, and then they'll bring the ramp out, type of thing.
Yeah.
But to be honest, to have that much stuff in the way, like as you go in, it doesn't really help. So there's
Yeah.
like baskets, there's a lottery thing, and the whole stand for the newspapers. So you've got literally no space to get in anyway.
Or you kind of take it all out on your way in, just rearrange the
Yeah.
newspapers for it.
I know. Kirsten goes climbing on the shelves in the supermarket.
Oh, I've seen people do it, and I can
Mm.
understand how annoying it must be. Yes.
I suppose it's that thing because you sometimes think, oh, you don't want to bother people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also like you have to then wait around until someone turns up who's tall enough to reach. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Exactly.
even for me, like I just sometimes like going to Tesco where I don't buy from any of the top shelves, so I don't have to ask anyone. So I only look at the middle shelves just because then I feel like it's kind of like a weird independence. It sounds
You want to be
strange, but
independent.
I went shopping and didn't ask for help from anyone, even though like you know what I mean. It's just more of a browse, and then I get whatever I can reach in that sort of area. Might think that, but yeah.
But it's that being patronised thing, isn't it? Nobody wants to. People want to feel that as independent as possible, and really, shopping environments should try and make that as much of a thing as possible.
Yeah. Chrissy says, I always offer to help, but it's tricky as some people can be offended. I have a knee brace on both knees now, so I will probably need to be asking for help soon. Oh, bless you. I'm never ever been offended if anyone offers to help me ever, and I would never be offended. You know what I mean?
Because you can either say yes or no, can't you? I don't
Yeah,
mind saying to
exactly.
somebody who looks like they're looking to say, "Can I help?" And if they say, "Fine,"
definitely.
move on.
Yeah. I know the one thing is that sometimes people take over from it, like they do things you can do, and that annoys me a little bit, have to admit. But like, so there's no need to grab something in front of me I've never asked for, and just because I'm looking at it doesn't mean I want one.
And you might be having a daydream.
Yeah, like just, and although I've never said anything, I'll just say, I just said, oh no, I was just looking, you know what I mean? And I would never say anything. But then also, even with some carers that I've had in the past, when they've come in and they're trying to like I'm getting ready on the morning, whatever, and they're trying to take me top off for us or whatever, I mean, nighty or whatever, and I'm like, I can do that myself. You know what I mean? Don't take away the things I can do.
Yeah, because they're precious.
No, I can do it. Or they've like brought us the yogurt and pulled the lid off, and I know sometimes it's like habit because they see elderly people who can't do it, and I get that.
You're not elderly,
but I'm not. Yeah, so I can do it.
And you might not want a yogurt.
Yeah.
You know.
But
it's a line to be trod, isn't it? The over helpful and unwanted help.
But I definitely think, like, to offer the help if you see someone looking at something and
but if they don't want help, then that's fine.
That's fine. Don't be upset because they don't want your help, and don't offer just in case they do, that kind of thing.
But that comes from a need, doesn't it? It's people need to be needed or need to feel they're being useful.
And there is people out there, I think especially older people, who struggle to ask for help even if they do need it. They'll struggle on, type of thing. Whereas if you ask, they might allow it because they haven't had to do the asking, if that makes sense.
Exactly. They haven't had to go, can you help me? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Joan said here, she said there are many people of all ages with invisible disabilities, so it's good to be aware. And she's a wheelchair user because of fatigue. So that may mean that you're not always in a wheelchair. This is the thing. It might not be 100% of the time. But yeah, I mean, there are people who have very poor vision. I have a friend who has very poor vision, and to all intents and purposes, it just looks like she's wearing sunglasses out of season. As she can see, but she doesn't see well enough, and people sort of barging into her or not giving her any space and just no consideration. You know, it's a shame, really. She doesn't want to have to walk around with a big sign on her going, I'm partially sighted. You know, you shouldn't have to do that.
No, I think my dad, when he was partially sighted as well, he had the big sort of what looked like sunglasses, what he said, from the blind society, and he had a white stick as well, and he was crossing the road once with my brother actually, and this guy stopped and let him and was really helpful, and when my dad got to the other side, he stopped to have a look at his bet out his wallet. And I think the guy must have been thinking, hold on, I thought you were blind and you've just stopped to look at your bet, you know what I mean? But obviously, like you said, it's partially, it's still obviously a hindrance to a person, but
well, especially with traffic and all that. And then being deaf must be really difficult, because if you can't hear traffic, or you know, it's very isolating and alienating. So it is a disability in a way, but it's not necessarily something someone's going to see or understand.
No. Yeah, I remember when I worked for a taxi company, there was a deaf guy, and he used to write where he wanted to go, and then I would just write back to him, and you know what I mean? That's how we communicated, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Must have been a struggle for things like that, because you couldn't use a telephone, you know what I mean? Like, as in just a general phone call.
No. Yeah, I mean, a lot of old people end up going deaf or partially deaf or what have you, and some are very stubborn about not using hearing aids and not switching them on. But you know, it's quite a common thing. But when it becomes a real disability, as we were saying a little bit earlier, it's a kind. There is a line somewhere, but it is a continuum. So
I suppose if it affects your life, and then it's got to be like, if it affects your life to a point that it changes what you normally do, then it's disabling you, I guess, isn't it? Like, to what degree that is dependent on the situation and what the issues are, because there'll be some things that are fine and you can do, and others that you can't do. John says, I'm always sad when people tell their small kids off when I'm using my white cane. People shout, let the lady through, get out of the way, to that poor confused child. So I always stop and talk to them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I get that, actually. Move out the way. Kind of thing. I'm just happy to, you know, I'll just slowly wait till they move. Of their own accord, it's fine.
Yeah, well, it's difficult to be in a hurry, isn't it, when you've got you know, so much to consider. You know, you've got to steer the thing, and I know steering it's not that easy, because there have been the odd lampposts that you've caused considerable damage to, I gather.
Just one lamppost. It was just one. It was still the flag's fault. And I also had to do a test in the wheelchair as well. I had to pass a test.
Like a driving test?
Yeah. Take you out in the wheelchair. They have to prove that you're safe and able to use it, basically.
Well, obviously, I don't know if they do that down here. I've seen some of the mobility scooters where I'm like,
well, people who buy mobility scooters are different. You don't. If you buy your own, you've got no. Well, there is a law within the speeds of it, and where you can be, and all of that type of thing. Yeah. No, but I remember going over the bridge, going into town one day, and I was just going along in Robo Bitch, and then this lady with a blue rinse, who must have been approaching 90, zoomed past me, and I was fuming. It's like, this is I need the space. I need to race now, and I can't. I need a turbo boost for it or something. Like, but they
can go quite quickly, and they can be a bit of a peril. We do have quite a community of much older people, and it's quite funny, because you see all the mobility scooters lined up outside the Wetherspoons, and they've all gone in. Are you allowed to drive that after drinking? Or, again, normal laws don't obviously apply.
I would say no. I don't actually know the rules. I would say no, because you can't ride a bike, can you?
I don't think you're meant to be drunk in charge, but
exactly.
Not easy to prove.
No. Steve Jones says, Heather, the lamppost jumped out in front of Leonie. Exactly.
I'm sure it did. Unawares, just like yes.
No, it was me stupid fault. I will admit it. Um, when you're driving and something flies in your eye, normally like so you just do that and it's gone and it's fine. You carry on. But a fly flew into my eye as I was going along, and I tried to get rid of it and it hadn't gone, and so I kept going. And the next thing I knew, I was up the lamppost. I really caused some issues to my.
Yeah, I remember seeing the aftermath, and it was in the quite early days, wasn't it, when he was out and about? Yeah.
Mm.
Oh dear. Ashley says here, nurses should take a wheelchair moving course. I'm not allowed into the hospital ward when my mum gets her treatment, and every time they crash her into the door frames, they really hurt her leg once. Oh, blimey. People, they should have enough experience, really, in their day-to-day life to. I mean, I was quite bad with my son in his pushchair, to be honest. I shouldn't have been in charge, but you get used to it, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, Wetherspoon's a good for accessibility, I suppose.
Yeah, our one's not that brilliant, actually, because it's in an old bank. Or no, it's an old post office. So it does have steps at the front. So, but I think people can go round the back and get in that way if they have to be. But I know all the people leave their mobility scooters kind of parked up out the front, so it looks like a very kind of odd version of a motorcycle park, except it's not. It's just full of scooters.
So we've covered mobility, we've covered a bit of sight and like I remember because obviously I did a video a while back actually about the issues within the wheelchair. So stuff from like stuff on the ground like sticks, bricks, stones, whatever, and dog poo, that's another one.
God, not
Curbs, people parking over curbs, which happens loads in the street around the corner from me because it's got shops in it. And so there was all those issues. And then I remember I was talking to a lady who was telling us about a mum who had lost her sight, and she'd gotten a guide dog to be able to go out again, and she was loving going out, but the guide dog was great because obviously helped her cross roads and things like that, but it doesn't allow when someone's bushes have overgrew into the pathway, you just get whacked in the face because the guide dog doesn't know not to to warn you of that sort of thing. So, and I didn't really think about it, but again, it's one of those things when that happens to you, it changes changes that, doesn't it? And it makes you more aware, I suppose. But so I suppose it's like disabled from birth, and then something happening to you, whether that be an accident or medically illness, I guess, that causes you to then be disabled after.
Because the adjustment process must be, I mean, obviously everybody's different in how they will react to it and the level of support they're going to get with it. But I mean, to have something sort of completely life-changing where you've suddenly got to relearn and kind of reacclimatise to a different world from the one you were in, a week ago, what have you. It's, I can't even begin to imagine how that must be.
After I was ill and I was in hospital, and because I hadn't walked for 3 months, and then I started to build just back up again, and I was getting up and learning. At first, I learned to stand again, and it's so weird because you don't realise how much of your balance is controlled by your big toe. So your big toe controls so much of your balance that you don't realise. And my big toe used to ache because that was one of it. And then you get all sorts of feelings. But also, if you sit on a chair and you put your legs up on a chair like long ways, your feet are like sort of that, aren't they, up against your legs? So your legs out straight and your foot's sort of at that angle. Where because I hadn't walked, I have no muscle strength in that bit, so my feet just do that.
Oh,
so you can't keep up anymore. Yeah, but also when I was doing all that, and I did try for quite a long time, and then my knees kept locking, so they would lock. Like one would lock, and it would lock for about 7 months, and I couldn't move. I couldn't even get off the bed because it would just lock into place. because I've got no cartilage between my two knees. The knees would grind till they're like sort of jammed together.
Oh,
Yeah,
mm,
wasn't fun.
oh, ugh.
And then it kept happening alternately. So every time I would get back on my feet or get up to stand enough, and I kept trying. I was stuck in the house. I'd been in hospital for 6 months, and came in and was stuck in the house for 2 years. And then in the end, agreed to have the hoist because I wasn't getting outside, and it did. It changed my life really, because as much as like it's hard to deal with, and certain things, and obviously I've got the light now, so I can change my own light and stuff like that. Still get really frustrated about things that need sorting that I can't do
Yeah.
sometimes. And I know that a lot of people suffer with their mental health because of it, or end up with depression if they're struggling with stuff that's happening for them, like, and especially if, like you said, if someone was a really active person and then they suddenly, I don't know, have an accident or whatever, where they aren't able to be that active person, that must be a massive like deal for them.
Well, mental health wise, to not be able to, exercise or get out. I mean, I know even in the case of my husband, when he had a knee operation, was very active, and then to not be able to kind of go out and do things affected him far more than it would have, say, me, because that whole thing of where you've got to be exercising in order to feel good, or it's part of your day-to-day thing, it's part of who you are. So you almost have to redefine who you are, not by your body. It's that thing of, I'm not my body, I am me, and the body is just the vehicle in which you get around in. That's quite a leap to make.
Also for the people around as well, like the people who are immediate family or friends or whatever, who then have to see what happens to that person, and also how much it changed them, as well as having to do more for them and be needed more, you know what I mean?
That independence, some people are more naturally independent than others, or will struggle with it more than others. And obviously, the burden falls on a certain family member or something like that. It changes the whole dynamic of the relationship.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Not always for the worst, but not always for the better either. Just depending on who it is.
True. It can be so complicated, I guess, and
the frustration of it all. I think frustration must be the most prominent emotion, because you want to do things and you probably get cross with yourself because you can't, but then you have to sort of switch it around and focus on what you can do, which, as far as I can tell, seems to work quite well for most people, is focus on what you can do, not what you can't.
Well,
and then it puts a whole different thing on it.
That is what I sort of kind of say all the time, you have to focus on what you can do and not what you can't, because it's a waste of energy. It doesn't change anything. You know what I mean? It doesn't change what happens, or being able to do those things. You still can't do them. So you've got to be able to focus and change your focus and do what works better for you. And it massively makes a difference. And that doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way, because I know I've had a dip with things, a couple of times, like where I get, and it happens. It's not very often, but every so often, like just when I couldn't do something I wanted to do, I can have a dip in it. But I normally
that's normal.
Yeah.
No one can be up all the time, but also finding new things that you can do. So, I mean, I know photography for you is a passion and a connection to nature, which is something which has really helped you through, and also the doing this sort of thing, getting out there, but in the world without actually having to physically leave where you have to be.
Yeah.
Massive difference.
Definitely. I mean, like, I hope that it just helps somebody somewhere, you know what I mean? But also, I didn't realize when I started doing this that it would be something that I would enjoy and love, and has had a massive help to me on my confidence and everything, you know what I mean? As well as just in general, I suppose. But,
and I've really seen that over the last couple of years, really just seen you kind of blossom, I think is the phrase, isn't it? It's that whole thing, just getting more relaxed, more comfortable with it, just not what, just getting out there and doing it,
Yeah.
no fear.
yeah. I think it's getting help as well when you need. I know a friend of mine is just getting a stair lift, which will be a massive deal for her, like a massive
Wow.
change in her life, because she hasn't been able to go upstairs, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, the waiting times for some things take a long time, um, and obviously you're grateful that you're getting help in things like that, but because the turnover and then you're waiting for something else or you need this or whatever,
Yeah.
it all takes time.
It's
Um,
like,
um, my health change affected me hard. Over went overnight from doing everything myself to needing carers. Oh, hi, Mike.
oh, Mr. D is Mike. Oh, hi there, Mike. We know
Yeah,
you now, don't we?
I
Yeah,
I
you've
can
been through a lot,
imagine.
though.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be a massive deal, like a massive change. I think mine was more gradual in a way because I got back on my feet and then you know what I mean. And I do remember at one point being in hospital and I'd completed 30 steps and that was the furthest I'd done. I remember thinking to myself that night was my birthday actually, and like just dreaming of the future and going different places and all this, and wondering where I'll be, like you know what I mean. But obviously, it wasn't. It didn't plan the way I thought it would have at that time. But
Yeah,
that's kind of life, isn't it? Really, it
doesn't always go the way you plan. Yes.
no, definitely not. No. Um, and I
Mm.
think the other thing I was thinking of is within disability is having a child born with like with disabilities, um, because that must be really hard to because I suppose when you have children, you think of their future and you know when
And
they're growing up,
independence and having their
yeah,
own life.
yeah, and having their
Mm.
own life and
Mm.
then so it's especially with a severely disabled child that needs 24 hour support kind of thing. That must be really hard
Yeah,
to lose that future for them as the day to day, obviously, um, because like you said, you need hope, don't you? And that's something that I guess you have to accept.
exactly. And I mean, if you can get the care needs sorted out, then there is no reason why someone, even with fairly severe physical disabilities, can't have their own life and will probably fight for it quite fiercely. But,
Yeah,
when you're talking about coupled with other disabilities, sort of psychological ones and stuff,
yeah,
mental disabilities, then, and something like that it's difficult then to hold out hope because your chances of an independent life are clearly
yeah,
reduced. But to have some measure of independence and control over your life, however severely disabled you may be at any point in time, has got to be a priority. Because
definitely.
that's what keeps people sane, it's
Yeah,
knowing that they could got some choice in their life. Mm.
yeah. It's it not only then puts on like the pressure on the family as well because if that family have other children,
Yeah.
the priority then goes to the one with the needs, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, it's
um,
quite well documented that the other children are quite often feel they don't begrudge it, but there's that
no,
feeling of
no,
that they're going to come further down the pecking order. Mm.
yeah, definitely. Um, but just seeing what else I've written down here.
Oh, Susan's in. Hi, Susan.
Susan.
Everyone's in.
So I
Mm.
just wrote like effects on your life, which obviously we've kind of covered there. Not being able to do what you do, but there's loads of little things I think that you don't really take into consideration that those all affect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Susan said something very interesting here. Susan Badwolf said her sister was born disabled. She was a wheelchair user. It had a strange effect on me as the able-bodied sibling. I had a lot of guilt. That is incredibly common. It's
Yeah,
almost like survivor guilt. It's that whole thing of, well, yeah, you've got something that they want. You've got the ability to get up and walk away when you want to and be independent. And I think it is sometimes out of those feelings of guilt that people then end up becoming the carers themselves, or compensating in some way. But it is difficult on all of the family. It's not just the individual with the actual disability. Really can change the sort of dynamics of a family completely.
I can imagine that, as you said, that you would feel guilt, but then even though you shouldn't be guilty or you shouldn't feel guilt, but you would, wouldn't you? It's natural, as you said, type of to do that.
Yeah, it is very common.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. During depression and frustration, which are two big things, I guess accepting it, I suppose, is one, isn't it? Like the acceptance, if you're able, if the disability that you've got is a disability that is you're able to accept, essentially.
Especially if it's a permanent thing where the chances of actually coming of improvement are remote. It's a little bit like when we had our conversations about death, that kind of process. You're almost grieving a lost life, but it's your own able lost life, if you know what I mean. And sometimes people have to go through that to then go, yeah, well, okay, but I'm still here and I can still do this and I can still. And thank goodness for the the electronic internet and social media and things, because it does empower people who physically would struggle. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. I was just thinking of something then. I've just lost my thread. Brain doesn't work much. No, it's gone.
It will come back. Joan's been through a lot as well.
Joan,
lost most of her sight instantly, not being able to drive. That is a massive thing, because we put so much on being able to drive as part of adulthood and independence. It's a big loss, and being bedbound as well. So that can't be easy, Joan. But that's what's so good about having online communities and stuff, is that the support can be there, where it's not dependent on your ability to physically go.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. If I hadn't gone through what I've gone through, and I think I was saying this to actually Sharon yesterday. I think it was Sharon yesterday. That I sometimes wonder if I'd sorted my mental health out years and years ago, how my life would have been different and stuff like that. But then, if that were the case, I probably would never have done YouTube, and I would never know the people I know, and that's a massive sacrifice to change, because if I could change it, would I? Do you know what I mean? Would I actually do that? Because the amount of people who I've made friends with and who I'll be friends for life with since doing YouTube is amazing, and the community spirit and the money that we're all raised and stuff like that. So those things that I can't, they're all amazing things. That would I instantly just decide that to change that if I could? I don't know.
It'd be a close run thing, wouldn't it? Yeah. It's never quite that simple, is it?
No, definitely not. No. I saw Mike was born with Spina Bifida, and until 8 years ago, he was able to walk with crutches.
Yeah. And giving up on that, not having that anymore, it's a massive. It can feel like a very negative step.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's there's all kinds of sort of illnesses and stuff that goes on. I know several people who have a thing called fibromyalgia. That's the one.
Also known as fibro. Well,
and that's debilitating, and not consistently, but it can really disrupt somebody's life. I know several people who have it, and it's horrible, But some people think it's not even real. They get it confused with other things, and it's very real. It's horrible.
Yeah. The doctors think I might have it, but I've never been actually confirmed or anything. But because there's a closeness between the lipedema and lymphedema and that in the pain sort of issues, sort of moving pain, which is weird. But anyway, it's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, there's so many debilitating things that, and especially like you said, ones that aren't visible, and then people just assume it's like, you're putting it on, or you're just pretending, or you want the sympathy, or when you can see something physically
Yeah.
in front of you, like obviously being in a wheelchair, like having crutches even, or a walking stick, or um, a white stick if you're blind, and things like that. When you've got those people, your brain, for some reason, it's your brain computes, all right, that person has a disability, but when it's not actually visible.
Yeah. And I think it's just part of people being in such a hurry and being so busy and being so blinkered that they're not actually thinking about the people around them, or, the sort of distinction. And, in a lot of communities, people don't necessarily know their neighbours or know, just know the people around them. There isn't that same connection, or sometimes, but not so often. And I think that's what makes the difference. If somebody's a stranger or if somebody's known to you, that completely changes things.
Definitely. So I don't know if anyone's got any other things to say at that, any questions or things they want to.
Susan's just said here that talking about her sister, that it's very confusing as a child to try and understand the feelings.
Yeah.
Again, people don't tend to talk to children about their feelings. It's like the children are resilient is the line that gets thrown around. Children bounce back from things, they're adaptable, etc.
Oh, they're not explained things, they're not told
Yeah.
about things, so they only see what they see, and what they see is usually enough to confuse them and upset them quite a bit, isn't it?
Exactly, and it can affect a whole life. The feelings that you acquire as pick up as a child can come with you the whole way through. And apparently Spina Bifida was what Susan's sister had. So yeah. It's horrible thing. But like I say, what's visible and what isn't, and people shouldn't have to go around with badges on them if everyone should get a certain level of consideration and good treatment, no matter what, really.
That's true.
Yeah. But and then you get people seeing people doing stuff on the Paralympics, which is all marvellous, but there's very few people really that are up for that kind of thing. It's like,
yeah, definitely.
Okay, but that's not everybody, is it?
If I get me turbo, I might have a go wheelchair racing.
Well, exactly. Each to their own.
You're yourself, aren't you? Though that's the problem.
Yeah.
Always a problem. But yeah, I think I've pretty much covered what I had written down anyway, and I don't know what we're doing, what topic we're doing next week. We have opened it up a few times.
Let's go back to the list. Okay, we've done death, we've done addiction. This was disability. So we had the three other areas that we had discussed, unless there's new ones come up, are life and work, health issues, and mental health.
Yeah.
Those three.
Yeah, I think I've got love is one as well.
Ooh, there's a big subject.
Yeah.
I shall add that.
But I don't know if anyone has any suggestions in the side chat. Anyone would like to suggest a topic that they want to discuss, and we will definitely tackle it in one of these. Oh, you calendar.
Susan's just reminded me. It's true. I haven't. So goodbye to the swan bums, and hello to Mr. Seagull.
Mr. Operatic Seagull.
He does it like he's shouting at the very top of his voice.
I think he's singing Nessun Dorma or something.
Probably not quite as tunefully, mind you. But
no, definitely not, though.
I like the little phrase at the bottom: "A negative mind will never give you a positive life."
It's one of my favourite quotes.
Yeah,
I've actually got loads, to be fair, though. Hi, Junie. Junie says fibromyalgia is one of the chronic illnesses I have, and it can be very I can't speak. Debilitating
Debilitating.
condition. It has impacted my life a lot, from having to give up my work to needing help with personal care.
Mm,
Yeah, that
yeah.
personal care side of things is one that I've struggled with. I got to the point where I just kind of had to switch off in a way. It's like a it's like I need it. I can't, you know what I mean? It is very hard at first, though, especially if you get
Mm,
new people and all that, and you've got to go through. Do you know what I mean? Um, but yeah, um, it, it's horrible when it changes your life so much, um, or impacts your life that you can't do what you did before.
mm. Yeah, and that's the thing, is to be kind to yourself and not beat yourself up over it, because that's where you'll tend to go, isn't it?
Mm.
Initially. Oh, excuse me. That's Pinterest thinking I want things. No, thank you. And it's also Pancake Day today.
Yes.
So we'll be having pancakes for after tea, obviously, after dinner tonight. Pancakes and ice cream, my son's favourite.
All right. Um, Pancakes is one that I won't be having any today. Hi, Susan. I think loneliness might be a good subject to cover if there's time and schedule. Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
and that's thank you very much. Yes, all suggestions welcome. It's on the
Definitely.
list.
Yeah, because you can be lonely in a crowd full of people, can't you?
And you can be lonely in a relationship. That
Oh,
can happen too. And
exactly.
I think sometimes the need not to be lonely can drive people to form
Yeah,
relationships that maybe aren't quite the best.
it's strange when you start talking about these different subjects. How many of them overlap each other? So the
Well,
mental
they all
health
do.
one probably covers everything, really. It's overlapped by everything, and then um,
Yeah.
you know, it's strange. Um, but yes, we we could do loneliness next week if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good start point. And I think it's something that can be helped by social media or hindered by it, depending.
Yeah,
So yes, we can certainly cover that. It will be on my channel next week, won't it? I
yeah.
will remember, because I'm
You'll,
really bad. Really bad at remembering. So poke me, tell me I need to do it, and I'll set up a stream.
I won't leave it this time and just think, "Oh, I'm sure she's going to do it in a minute."
I probably will, but occasionally I get a bit sidetracked.
We all
Yeah.
do. We all do. Your mum did pancakes with stew on top. Then it was sugar and lemon for aftershock. Oh, pancakes with stew.
Ooh,
That's
stew on
very.
top of a pancake.
Well, I suppose pancake is just Yorkshire pudding batter, isn't it? And
Yeah.
we were talking about this with Susan Badwolf, and she's saying that when she was a child, when she was young, the only type of Yorkshire pudding she had was sweet ones. She never had Yorkshire puddings as in with a dinner.
Oh right. Okay.
They were always a
Mm.
dessert type of thing with sugar on or stuff.
And I've had savoury pancakes. I mean, you can make them like a cannelloni and put bechamel and the old bolognese sauce in and stuff like that. So but they're quite, well, depending on who's made them, they can be quite heavy.
Yes,
They're
yeah.
quite filling.
Could probably like knock you out if you frisbee at someone.
Indeed. Although I have actually bought ones today rather than make them, because we don't really
Mhm.
need that many. There's only the three of us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been lazy this year. Ooh.
Um, Secret Cartway, which is Richard. Disability can be hidden as I go to a bar and ask for a drink, or into a charity, or going in a charity shop on my. I'm guessing that means on my own. I have no
Yeah,
confidence, but from the outside, you would never know if you met me. I suffer in silence like many do. It is
absolutely.
a
Yeah.
disability, though. It is. I know he says it. I know it's not a true disability, but it is. It affects your life, stops you
Mm.
doing things, and I mean, it'll probably come in under the. Um, like mental health things with like confidence.
Absolutely, yeah. Do
Stuff
tune
like
in.
that we'll talk about, but I totally think it is because it's debilitating to what you're doing, and it's
or you're not
affected
being
me.
yourself. You just have to put a mask on
It's
to cope.
obviously affecting me.
Yeah, and there are consequences to that. So yes, we will. Because
I've heard loads of people who really struggle to like even just go and order a tea in Costa, a takeaway tea in Costa, but yet you wouldn't think it when you know them, if that makes sense. So it's surprising what we all struggle with internally that we usually don't talk about, but and I always and even things like that, getting help with things like that is a massive deal. Changing and can be life changing,
and it is something that can be helped. There are therapies that really help with it, so you don't have to suffer. This is unlike certain physical disabilities. Maybe there isn't.
I wouldn't leave the house.
You can change it.
Yeah, I didn't leave the house for 4 years, because of the fear of being outside and speaking to people, and like. So I can understand in that sense. I used to get a wave of panic if I was out in somebody would look at us. If I was talking to somebody I knew, all I could think was what they were thinking in their head talking to us. I'd never enjoyed what I was doing when I was outside. So if I was in a room, it was busy, I'd just be thinking, oh God, if someone was laughing over there, I'd be thinking it was at me. And it's so debilitating. So I would never go and ask anyone anything. I'd just stay in and come on. Hi, Barbara. No, he's saying, I can't order a tea. I'm sure it was Nick who was talking about something like that. Was it Nick? Could have been.
He has covered mental health.
Yeah, it might have been Nick who was talking about. I'm sure a few people have mentioned similar things, that similar issues like that. Just getting a bit of a panic about it. That a struggle. But but it's definitely that sort of thing we will be covering.
Definitely, we will come back to that. Absolutely.
But we're just about at the hour now, so we shall wrap up. But thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you to the lovely Heather here. She's always you're just like a voice of wisdom to me.
Really?
You always have the right things to say. You know what I mean?
Oh, bless. Thank you.
We will be back, as Heather said, next week on Heather's channel. I have put her link below. If you're watching this back and you're not subscribed, then please go and subscribe to Heather. And I will see you tonight at 9 o'clock for Trivia Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye.